My dad was the kind of man people in our town admired. He wasn't famous, not in the way celebrities are, but in our little corner of Pennsylvania, he was almost a legend. He had this presence about him, the kind of smile that made strangers feel like they'd known him forever, and a voice that could calm anyone down during an argument. People always said, "Your dad is one of the good ones." Growing up, I believed it too. I mean, why wouldn't I? He was always there for school plays, parent-teacher conferences, soccer games, even if he came straight from work with tired eyes and wrinkled clothes. Whenever I messed up at school or got into arguments with my younger brother, Daniel, Dad always had the right words to make things better. Mom adored him, too. To everyone else, our family was picture perfect. But what stood out most about Dad was the story he told everyone. He always said he had a small town dream, one that he gave up for us. The details were always kind of vague, but the way he told it made it sound like some bittersweet sacrifice. "I had plans once," he'd say with a little chuckle at backyard barbecues or around the dinner table. "But when you kids came along, I knew what really mattered. I walked away from it all, because nothing was more important than being your dad." He wore that sacrifice like a badge of honor. Neighbors clapped him on the back, friends praised his selflessness, and even my teachers seemed to respect him for it. And as a kid, I glowed with pride. I thought, wow, my dad is the kind of person who gave up everything just for us. But there were times when I caught a flicker in his eyes, moments when he'd look out the window too long, or when a certain song on the radio would make him unusually quiet. Once, when I was about 12, I asked him what his dream was, the one he gave up. He just smiled, ruffled my hair, and said, "Don't worry about that. My dream now is seeing you kids grow up happy." It sounded sweet at the time. But looking back, I wonder if that was his way of dodging the truth. Life in our house had a rhythm. Mom worked part-time at the library, Daniel was always the outgoing one with a million friends, and I was the quiet one. I liked reading in my room, sketching in notebooks, and listening to stories Dad told at the dinner table. His stories had this magical way of making the ordinary seem extraordinary. But what I didn't realize then was how much of his life he wasn't telling us. The cracks started showing slowly, like hairline fractures in glass. I was 16 when I noticed Dad disappearing into the basement more often. It wasn't unusual for him to work on little projects down there, fixing up old furniture, tinkering with tools. But sometimes I'd hear the creak of the basement door late at night when I knew he wasn't fixing a table leg or polishing a chair. He'd stay down there for hours, and when he came back up, his face would be unreadable, like he'd left part of himself down in that dimly lit space. Mom brushed it off when I asked. "You know your father," she said with a laugh. "He just needs his quiet time." But I wasn't convinced. Then came the moment that changed everything. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon, the kind of day where the whole world feels heavy and gray. Mom had gone out to run errands, Daniel was at a friend's house, and I was stuck inside with nothing to do. Bored, I wandered into the basement, thinking maybe I could help Dad with whatever project he was working on. But when I opened the door, he wasn't there. Instead, I noticed something I'd never seen before, a dusty old trunk tucked behind a shelf of paint cans and toolboxes. It looked ancient, the kind of thing you'd see in movies when characters stumble across lost treasures. Curiosity gnawed at me, and before I even realized it, I was pulling it out. The lock was rusty, almost falling apart. With a little force, it popped open. Inside were stacks of papers, envelopes, and at the very bottom, a leather-bound journal. Its edges were frayed, the pages yellowed with time. I picked it up, brushing the dust off the cover. My heart was pounding as I opened it. At first, the handwriting was almost too messy to read. But as my eyes adjusted, the words began to make sense. The first page said, "This is the life I can't tell anyone about. Not my wife. Not my kids. No one. If they knew, everything would change." I froze. The air in the basement suddenly felt heavier, pressing down on me. My dad had written this. He had a life, another life, that he deliberately hid from us. I flipped through the pages, my hands shaking. There were mentions of names I didn't recognize, places I'd never heard him talk about, and feelings he'd never shared with us. It was like looking at a stranger's heart on paper, only that stranger was my dad. My chest tightened as realization sank in. The man who'd always been my hero, who taught me right from wrong, who told us he gave up his dream just for us, had secrets big enough to fill a journal he never intended us to read. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. I sat there in the basement, clutching that leather-bound journal like it was a ticking time bomb. My dad's handwriting, the words etched onto those pages, it didn't feel real. My hands were trembling, my heart hammering so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I knew I shouldn't be reading it. It felt wrong, like breaking into someone's soul. But at the same time, how could I not? My dad had spent my entire life telling us the story of who he was, the sacrifices he made, the dream he abandoned to raise us. But now, here was proof that another story existed, one he'd gone to great lengths to bury in the basement. I turned the page, the paper fragile and soft beneath my fingers. The entry was dated 20 years ago, long before I was even born. I never thought it would come to this. 2 lives. 2 versions of me. And the worst part? They both feel real. I can't choose. I don't know if I ever will. 2 lives? What did that even mean? My stomach twisted as I read more. There were entries about a small town in Ohio, about someone named Clara, about nights filled with music, laughter, and dreams of escaping to someplace bigger. My dad wrote about the stage, about playing guitar at local bars, writing songs late into the night, performing to crowds who cheered like he was a star. I blinked, confused. My dad? The same man who spent his weekends mowing the lawn, coaching my brother's little league team, and lecturing me about finishing homework, that dad? He had once been a musician chasing stardom? But the entries went deeper. He wrote about Clara like she was the love of his life. The words were raw, filled with longing. Clara believes in me more than I believe in myself. When she looks at me, I feel like I could actually make it. But I can't shake the guilt. I know what I'm leaving behind in Pennsylvania. I know what this means if I don't go back. I reread those lines over and over. Pennsylvania. That was home. He had written this while living somewhere else, while building a life I knew nothing about. And then came this sentence that sent a chill straight through me. I can't let them ever find out about Clara. About the child. The child. I dropped the journal as if it had burned me. My breathing turned shallow. My dad had another child? Somewhere out there, I might have a sibling I never knew about. My mind was spinning. All the stories he told about sacrifice, about giving up his dream for us, was it all a lie? Did he really give it up? Or did something else happen that forced him to come back? I didn't realize how long I sat down there until I heard footsteps creak above me. Panic shot through me. I shoved the journal back into the trunk, pushed it behind the shelves, and tried to make it look untouched. My hands were still shaking when Dad's voice called down the stairs. Hey, kiddo. You down there? I swallowed hard. Why, yeah, just looking for, paint for a school project. All right, he said casually. Don't mess with my stuff. Some of it's dangerous. Dangerous. I wondered if he meant the tools or the truth hidden inside that journal. When he finally closed the basement door, I sat back down on the steps, my whole body buzzing with fear and curiosity. I couldn't just leave it alone now. That journal had answers I needed, answers that could destroy everything I thought I knew about my family. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the words in my head. 2 lives. Clara. The child. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the TV downstairs where Dad was watching late-night sports highlights. I wondered if he had any idea that just hours earlier, his secret life had been cracked wide open. The next morning, I went to school like everything was normal. But inside, I was carrying a storm no one could see. My best friend, Lily, noticed right away. You look like you've seen a ghost. she whispered as we sat in homeroom. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to dump everything on her and beg her to help me make sense of it. But the words stuck in my throat. How could I explain that my dad, the man everyone adored, might have another family out there? Instead, I just shrugged and said, didn't sleep much. The lie tasted bitter. As the days went by, the journal haunted me. I couldn't focus in class. I'd come home and sneak back into the basement whenever I could, reading entry after entry. Each one peeled back another layer of the man I thought I knew. He wrote about Clara's laughter, about the way her hair smelled like summer rain, about holding a baby in his arms and feeling like his heart would burst. He wrote about torn decisions, guilt eating at him, and the fear of being exposed. One entry, dated about 18 years ago, right around the time I was born, was especially hard to read. I told Clara I couldn't stay. I told her I had to go back to Pennsylvania. She cried and begged me not to leave, not with the baby depending on me. But I couldn't face both lives colliding. I told myself I was choosing family over dreams. But maybe I was just running away. I pressed my hand to my mouth to stop from making a sound. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. So he had chosen us. But not in the noble, selfless way he always made it sound. He hadn't sacrificed a dream just to be a dad. He had run away from Clara, from the baby, from the life he built in Ohio. And suddenly, my childhood memories didn't feel as steady as they once had. Every story he told, every proud smile he wore, every time he said, family comes first. I couldn't help but wonder if deep down, he was thinking of the family he abandoned. By the end of the week, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep this secret bottled up inside me forever. I had to find out the truth, even if it meant tearing my family apart. Secrets have a way of consuming you from the inside out. By the time a few more days passed, I felt like I was living a double life of my own. On the surface, everything was the same. I went to school, did homework, ate dinner with my family, and even laughed at my brother's dumb jokes. But underneath, I was carrying a weight that got heavier every single day. I couldn't look at Dad the same way anymore. Every smile of his felt rehearsed. Every "how was your day, kiddo?" sounded like a cover-up. I wanted to scream at him. Tell me about Clara. Tell me about the baby. Tell me why you've lied to us all these years. But instead, I just nodded, pushed food around my plate, and excused myself early from dinner. Mom noticed something was off. She asked if I was stressed about school, if I was fighting with friends, if I was feeling okay. I almost told her the truth right then, but something stopped me. What if she knew? What if she had been keeping this secret with Dad the whole time? The thought made my chest ache. So I kept it to myself, but I couldn't stop digging. Every afternoon when no one was around, I snuck back into the basement. I read more of the journal, searching desperately for something concrete, an address, a last name, anything that could lead me to Clara or the child. Finally, I found it. An entry tucked between ramblings about music gigs and guilt. Clara said she's moving to Cleveland to stay with her cousin. She thinks it will be better for the baby, a fresh start. I told her I'd visit, that I'd make it work somehow. But I know I won't. I know this is goodbye. Cleveland. My heart pounded as I reread the entry 3 times. It wasn't much, but it was something. That night, I sat in my room with my laptop glowing in the dark, typing Clara Cleveland into search bars over and over. It was hopeless, too vague, too many results. But I couldn't stop. I searched records, scrolled through Facebook profiles, even checked old newspaper archives. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I knew I wouldn't stop until I found something. Meanwhile, Dad's behavior started to make more sense, or maybe I was just noticing things I used to ignore. His late nights in the basement. His distant stares. The way he sometimes slipped up when talking about sacrifice, almost like he was convincing himself as much as us. Then came the night that cracked things open even further. I had just come home from Lily's house when I heard voices in the kitchen. I paused in the hallway, heart thudding, and leaned closer. It was Mom and Dad. You can't keep doing this, Mom said, her voice low but sharp. I'm not. Dad started. Yes, you are. Sneaking down there. Writing again. Reliving it. You think I don't notice? My stomach dropped. She did know. I'm not hurting anyone, Dad said. It's just memories. Memories you never told me about when we got married, Mom snapped. Memories that could blow this family apart if the kids ever found out. I pressed a hand against the wall to steady myself. The words felt like knives. Mom knew everything. She had known all along. And she had chosen to live the lie too. I wanted to storm in right then, to demand answers, but fear held me back. If I confronted them without proof, without a plan, I risked everything exploding in the worst possible way. So instead, I slipped upstairs silently, my mind spinning. For days, I carried that conversation like a live wire in my chest. My parents had built our entire family on secrets, and I didn't know how much longer I could pretend not to see it. One night, desperate, I confided in Lily. We were sitting on her bedroom floor, surrounded by half-eaten bags of chips and empty soda cans, when the words tumbled out of me. My dad had another family. She stared at me, wide-eyed. What? What are you talking about? I explained everything. The journal, Clara, the baby, the late-night basement trips, the fight I overheard between Mom and Dad. By the time I finished, Lily's mouth was hanging open. Okay, she said slowly. That's huge. But are you sure? I mean, maybe you're reading too much into it? I pulled out the notes I had scribbled from the journal, shoving them into her hands. She read them, her face growing paler by the second. Wow, she whispered. So you might have a brother or a sister out there. The words hit me harder coming from her. A brother or sister. Someone who shared my blood. Someone who had been erased from my dad's version of our family. I have to find them, I said, my voice shaking. I need to know who they are. I need to know why my dad walked away. Lily hesitated, then nodded. Okay. Then I'll help you. That weekend, while my parents thought I was at a sleepover, Lily and I took a bus into Cleveland. We had nothing but an old address I'd found scribbled in the back of the journal, Maple Street, App 3B. It was probably years outdated, but it was the only lead I had. The bus ride felt endless, every bump in the road rattling my nerves. I stared out the window at the blur of passing towns, wondering what I'd say if we actually found Clara. Would she hate me for showing up? Would she even believe me? By the time we reached Cleveland, my stomach was in knots. We walked block after block until we found Maple Street, a row of old brick buildings with peeling paint and cracked sidewalks. Apartment 3B looked abandoned, mail piled up in the box, curtains drawn tight. My heart sank. Too late. We had come too late. But just as we turned to leave, an elderly woman sitting on the steps of the neighboring building called out, "You girls looking for someone?" I froze. Lily glanced at me. Then I took a deep breath and said, Yeah. We're looking for someone named Clara. She used to live here." The woman's eyes softened with recognition. "Clara, huh? Yeah, I remember her. Sweet girl. Lived here years back with her little boy. But they moved away. Must have been, 15, 16 years ago. Her little boy." My knees went weak. "Do you know where they went?" I asked desperately. The woman shook her head. "Sorry, honey. Just remember her packing up one day and saying she needed a fresh start." I nodded numbly, thanked her, and walked away in a daze. Lily grabbed my arm, her eyes wide. "You heard that, right?" "A boy." She had a boy. I nodded again, my throat too tight to speak. It was real. The journal wasn't just guilt and poetry. My dad did have another child. And that child, my brother, was out there somewhere. After the trip to Cleveland, there was no going back. Every time I looked at my dad, I didn't just see him anymore. I saw the little boy he had left behind. My brother. A whole life he had walked away from. And suddenly, the family dinners, The laughter, the bedtime stories from my childhood felt tainted. It was like living inside a play where every line had been rehearsed, every smile staged, and I was only now realizing the script wasn't real. Lily and I kept digging. We searched yearbooks, online records, even old social media accounts that hadn't been updated in years. Sometimes, we found names that seemed like they might fit, but nothing ever stuck. The boy, my brother, remained a shadow. But the more elusive he was, the more determined I became. Meanwhile, things at home were unraveling. Dad was restless, more distant than ever. He'd stay late at work or disappear into the basement for hours. Mom's smile looked plastered on, brittle around the edges. Daniel didn't seem to notice much. He was too busy with friends and sports, but I felt every ounce of tension humming in the air. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to confront them. It happened on a Thursday night. Dinner had been silent, the clink of forks on plates louder than any conversation. Finally, I couldn't hold it in. "Who's Clara?" I asked, my voice steady, but my hands trembling under the table. Dad froze. His fork slipped from his hand and clattered against his plate. Mom's head snapped toward me, her eyes wide. Daniel looked confused. "What did you say?" Dad asked, his voice low. I met his gaze. "I know about her. And I know about the boy. Your son. My brother." The silence that followed was suffocating. Daniel stared at me like I'd grown another head. Mom's face drained of color. And Dad, he just sat there, his eyes dark, his jaw tight. Finally, Mom spoke. "How do you know that name?" "I found the journal," I admitted, my throat tight. "In the basement." I read it. Dad's face crumpled, like the walls he built for decades had finally collapsed. He put his head in his hands, shaking it slowly. "You weren't supposed to know," he whispered. "You lied to us," I said, my voice breaking. "You lied to me. You told everyone you gave up your dream for us. But you didn't. You ran away. You left them." Daniel's eyes darted between us. "What is going on? What are you talking about?" Dad lifted his head, his eyes glassy. "It's true," he said hoarsely. "Before your mom, before this family, I was with someone else. Her name was Clara. And we had a son together." The words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. Daniel pushed his chair back. "Wait, you mean we have a brother?" Dad nodded slowly. "Where is he?" I demanded. "Do you even know?" Dad looked away, shame carved into every line of his face. "No." Clara moved away. I don't know where she went. The fury boiling inside me was too much to contain. "You chose not to know. You let him grow up without you. You let me grow up without knowing him. Do you realize what you've done?" Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wanted him to see my anger, not my pain. Mom finally spoke, her voice sharp but trembling. "Enough. This isn't how we handle things." I turned to her, incredulous. You knew. You knew this whole time and you said nothing." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I didn't know everything at first. When I married your father, I thought it was just a fling from his past. I didn't know about the child until years later. By then it was too late." "Too late for who?" I shouted. "For you? For your perfect family image? What about him? What about the boy who never had his dad?" Daniel stood up, his face pale. I can't be here right now." He grabbed his jacket and stormed out the door. The room fell into silence again. Dad reached across the table, but I pulled back. "I don't know who you are anymore," I whispered. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake replaying the conversation, the look in Dad's eyes, the way Mom tried to justify silence. Part of me wanted to hate them both, but another part of me just felt hollow. The next morning, Dad knocked on my bedroom door. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. I didn't want to, but I let him in. He sat on the edge of my bed, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I know you hate me right now, he began. And maybe I deserve that. But I need you to understand. I was young. I was scared. I didn't know how to be a father back then. I thought coming back here and building a life with your mom was the right choice. I told myself I was choosing stability, family, responsibility. But the truth is, I was running from my mistakes. I swallowed hard, my eyes fixed on the floor. Do you ever think about him? His voice cracked. Every day. I wanted to believe him. But how could I, when he hadn't lifted a finger to find his son? Then why didn't you look for him? I asked bitterly. He didn't answer right away. When he finally did, his voice was barely a whisper. Because I was afraid of what I'd find. Afraid he'd hate me. Afraid I'd ruin his life all over again. His words cut deep, but they didn't excuse the years of silence. I turned to him, my voice steady. Well, maybe you ruined mine instead. He flinched like the words physically hurt him. From that moment on, something shifted between us. I couldn't see him as just my dad anymore. He was a man with flaws so big, they cast shadows over everything. And as much as he wanted to keep hiding from the past, I couldn't. I needed answers. And I was going to find my brother, whether my dad helped me or not. Once the truth was out in the open, nothing at home felt the same. Conversations were stiff, dinners short, and the silence afterward heavy. Daniel avoided dad altogether, mom walked around like a ghost. And me, I threw myself into the search. I couldn't just let this go. There was someone out there, someone who shared my blood, someone who deserved to know that he wasn't forgotten, even if my dad had chosen to forget. I started with every clue the journal gave me. Clara, Cleveland, Maple Street. I spent hours at the library after school, scrolling through public records, yearbooks, even old local news articles. Lily helped, staying up late with me, eating pizza rolls and scanning endless search results. Every time we found nothing, frustration grew heavier. But then, one night it happened. We were sitting in my room, the glow of my laptop the only light. Lily leaned over my shoulder as I scrolled through an alumni list from a Cleveland high school, year 2021. My eyes stopped on a name, Ethan Miller. Miller, Dad's last name. I clicked, heart pounding. The page showed a yearbook photo. A boy with dark eyes. The same sharp jawline I saw in the mirror every morning. The same crooked smile Dad always had when he was nervous. Lily gasped. That's him. I didn't even need her to say it. I knew. I was staring at my brother. I printed the page, my hands trembling. Finally, proof. But finding him was only the beginning. What was I supposed to do? Just show up at his door and say, "Hi, I'm the sibling you never knew you had, and by the way, our dad abandoned you." The thought terrified me. But the thought of never meeting him terrified me more. The next weekend, Lily and I took another bus to Cleveland, this time with an actual name, an actual school. It wasn't hard to track down his address from a public database. It was listed under Clara's name. My chest tightened when I saw it printed on the page. This was real. As we walked up the quiet suburban street, every step felt heavier than the last. My palms were sweaty, my throat dry. What if he slammed the door in my face? What if Clara hated me for showing up? What if Dad had already ruined everything beyond repair? The house was small but well kept, with a faded blue door and a basketball hoop leaning in the driveway. I took a shaky breath and knocked. The door opened. A woman stood there, older than in Dad's journal descriptions but still striking. Her hair was streaked with gray, her eyes sharp and tired. I knew instantly. This was Clara. "Yes?" she asked cautiously. My voice almost failed me, but I forced the words out. "Are you Clara?" Her eyes narrowed. "Who's asking?" My throat tightened. "My name is Emma. My dad is Michael Miller." The name hit her like a blow. She froze, her face going pale. For a moment, I thought she might slam the door. But instead, she whispered, "Michael." Before I could say more, a voice came from inside the house. Mom? Who is it? And then he appeared. Ethan. He was taller than me, broad-shouldered, wearing a hoodie and basketball shorts. His hair was messy, his eyes curious. And when those eyes met mine, it felt like looking into a mirror I didn't know existed. Who's this? He asked. Clara's voice wavered. Ethan, this is your sister. The word hung in the air, electric. Ethan blinked, confused. My. What? I stepped forward, tears burning in my eyes. I'm your sister. From Dad. His face hardened. You mean the dad who never wanted me? The bitterness in his voice sliced through me. No, I said quickly, my voice breaking. That's not true. He made mistakes. He was scared. But I swear, I didn't know until recently. I just found out. And I had to meet you. Because you're my brother. And you deserve to know you're not alone. For a long moment, Ethan just stared at me. His jaw clenched, his eyes stormy. Clara's hand rested on his arm like she was bracing for him to explode. Finally, he asked, Does he know you're here? I shook my head. No. He doesn't even know I found you. Ethan let out a sharp laugh, one that was more pain than humor. Figures. Silence stretched between us. My heart sank. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have come. But then, Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. You really didn't know about me? No, I whispered. I swear. If I had, I would have found you sooner. Something softened in his eyes. He glanced at Clara, then back at me. Do you want to come in? I nodded, swallowing back tears. Inside, the house was warm, lived in. Photos lined the walls. Clara with Ethan at different ages. No sign of my dad. Just the life she had built without him. We sat in the living room, awkward and heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. So what's he like? The man who left us. I hesitated. He's complicated. To me, he was always this perfect dad. The guy who showed up to my soccer games, told me bedtime stories, cooked pancakes on Saturdays. But now I know he was lying to us too. Ethan's jaw tightened. He lied to everyone. Especially me. I nodded, tears spilling down my cheeks. I'm so sorry. For everything you missed out on. For everything he didn't give you. I can't change the past. But I want to know you. If you'll let me. For a long moment, Ethan just looked at me. And then, slowly, he nodded. Yeah. I think I want that too. Relief washed over me so strong it almost knocked me over. For the first time since finding the journal, I felt hope. But I knew this was just the beginning. Because sooner or later, Dad would have to face the son he left behind. It happened 2 weeks later. I convinced Ethan to meet me halfway, at a quiet park outside town. And I convinced Dad to come too, though he had no idea who was waiting. When Dad saw Ethan standing there, he froze. His face went pale, his eyes wide. Ethan's arms were crossed, his jaw set. Ethan? Dad whispered, his voice cracking. You remember my name? Ethan shot back, his voice dripping with anger. That's a surprise. Dad's hands shook as he stepped forward. I'm so sorry. For everything. For leaving. For not being the father you deserved. Ethan's eyes burned. Sorry doesn't change the fact that you left us. That you let Mom raise me alone while you played perfect dad somewhere else. Dad's face crumpled. Tears filled his eyes. You're right. I can't undo it. I can't give you back the years I stole. But I want to try. If you'll let me. Ethan looked away, his shoulders tense. You don't get to just walk back into my life like nothing happened. I know, Dad whispered. I'll do whatever it takes. Not for me, for you. I want to earn even a fraction of your forgiveness. The silence stretched. My heart ached watching them. knowing years of pain stood between them. But then Ethan finally spoke. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, but I'll give you a chance. For her. He nodded at me. My chest tightened as tears spilled down my cheeks. For me. For the first time, the family Dad had tried to hide was standing together. Broken, imperfect, scarred, but together. And in that moment, I realized something. We couldn't erase the past. We couldn't rewrite the lies. But we could choose what came next. Maybe, just maybe, we could build something new.